Today, my predictions, hopes, fears and desires for watches along with the industry in 2024. The past few years has been dominated by vintage-inspired designs from the 1970s and 80s. In my opinion, the next big thing will be a different era, and it starts with this sound. That's right, the 90s.
Oh, I'm sorry, did I break your concentration?
Goodbye.
Okay, hi guys and welcome to the show. As today is a 90s in theme, I thought I'd wear a watch from the 90s. This is my Girard-Perregaux Classic with the Power Reserve. Only 201 of these made in the entire world. I did a whole video about it. Do check it out if you missed it. Very Breguet in style as well, which is actually probably the best segue we're gonna get today. We'll get to that in just a moment. But yeah, I'm wearing it on the rainbow strap from Heuer, and I got this from Holben's, the quintessential dress watch strap. Anyway, we're not talking about Girard-Perregaux today. We're talking about, what are we talking about? As an addendum to my discussion on Breitling acquiring the sleeping horological giant I absolutely adore, Universal Geneve, in my best and worst releases of 2023 video, I don't expect to see any releases this year. Well, yet. Purely because of the amount of time it takes to design, research, test, adjust, test again, mass produce, market, and release a watch. Even if you do have that sweet Breitling DuckTales money. We might see a few teaser pics or promo leaks by autumn of this year if we are lucky, but I expect to see Universal Geneve either profoundly breaking watch enthusiasts' hearts or becoming grail collecting goals in 2025. It takes anywhere from 9 months to several years to create a watch from inception to completion, and trust me, I've done it dozens of times. So therefore, the watch trends and reactive releases to those trends that we see now are always a little bit delayed by a year or two, unlike the fads of the faster-moving fashion industry. Building on the momentum of the Moon Swatch in 2022, then the Blank Pan, or should I say Blank Pane, collab in 2023, I suspect of all the brands under the Swatch umbrella corporation, and by the way that was a deliberate reference to Resident Evil, Breguet will most likely be next. There simply is not a mechanical watch in the world that in some way doesn't feature components or design elements inspired by this most aristocratic of Swiss watchmakers. However, just like most blue-blooded entities, they have been slow to adapt to today's Black Mirror social media reality and still operate with very dated traditional marketing methods. While it will undoubtedly cheapen the stuffy old-world prestige of Breguet, unfortunately, there's no doubt that accessible bioceramic Happy Meal versions of their watches that trigger queues outside of watch stores will strategically put the spotlight on this heritage brand. And who knows, maybe it might just get the Breguet name back into the conversation when discussing Grail watches instead of your predictable, Patek, AP, VC, the Holy Trinity, right? I'm always hoping for the modestly scaled, formal and minimalist dress watch to be in vogue again. After the pandemic further exacerbated the casualization of everyday attire with working from home in gym jams, or in my case, leisure tracksuits like some kind of extra in a Nick Love movie.
Don't look like a postbox, do I?
No, mate. You look like bollocks.
It looks like a bloody postbox.
These guys today, they want to be buried on a jogging outfit.
When the world did return to some degree of normalcy, if it ever did, I was anticipating this would spark a renewed interest in more elegant watches as we emerged from our lockdown sartorial slumbers. It didn't happen. I fear the culprit is just my own hybridized sense of style. Terry Thomas's stiff upper lip correctitude, mixed with Steve McQueen's golden era Americana, a dash of Tony Soprano wise guy chic, a little bit of Leonardo Notte from 1992, and a light sprinkling of Vittorio Di Sica or Fraser Crane classicism. But having gods of style to look up to and be inspired by in forming one's own identity is just as important as it is with watches. Will the Keanu Reeves trend that I talked about of dressy watches with casual attire finally take hold? I do hope so. And if done right, it is an exceedingly cool style of sprezzatura. However, one aspect of this trend that is unquestionably still going strong is a continued interest in smaller watches. 42mm being the new 44, 40 being the new 42, 38 and blah 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 and so on. The upside to all of this is the unsold stock of larger watches is creating some absolute bargains for those with wrists like the opening of Predator.
You son of a bitch!
I predict a possible return of the oversized bigger watch trend in 2026 or 27 as part of the inevitable Ouroboros cyclical nature that counters all trends.
The high-quality escapement, cheapo plastic crap.
You're all going to die down here.
As far as movements go, well, after my rather controversial review of the PRX Powermatic, I suspect the more nefarious side of the Swatch empire will continue to find new insidiously shrewd ways to cut out more human watchmakers, among other questionable cost-cutting methods to further maximize profits. This System 51 approach to watchmaking will go beyond the entry level into the mid-tier of Swatch and further drive watch enthusiasts. Well, it will divide them more than Marmite, but further drive them towards Sellita and other alternatives, especially Citizen's new kid on the block, their genius Japanese-Swiss hybrid. We discussed Le Jeu Pareil in a video last year, and do check it out if you missed it. But I'm definitely a fan, as they are certainly capable of some great stuff. I predict to see more solid ETA alternatives in coming years. The only thing holding these ETA competitors back is their dated power reserves compared to the Powermatic's titular 80 hours. But I predict both Sellita and Citizen's JP are working on something to rival it as we speak. Let's just hope they don't take away that conventional regulator or introduce plastic parts like Swatch did, as that would be a terrible mistake. So the PRX is getting a lot of new people apparently into mechanical watches, which is always a great thing, but the use of plastic components by Swatch, is it a necessary evil in order to compete with the smartwatch, which is obliterating the industry faster than the quartz crisis, or a cash grab before the whole industry's ship sinks, or what needs to be done?
Iceberg, right ahead!
Some things are just inevitable. Rolex will continue with incremental changes that the Keeping Up with the Philistines lose their minds over, triggering the vapid speculative YouTube watch dealers to make endless amounts of derivative content, ignoring any interesting stuff like my favorite Rolex of last year, the classy and fascinating 1908. Naturally, more limited edition Omega Speedmasters, featuring juvenile toy-like motifs to further lure the inner man-child in collectors who have too much money and not enough meaning in their lives. So I'm going to interrupt this video. This is me in the future editing the video you're watching right now, which technically is the past because you're in the future watching this, which is my future. I don't even want to think about it, but While I was producing this video, this watch was released, another limited edition Speedmaster, and it just goes to show you, I can't even make a video without them releasing another Speedmaster. A 36mm Ranger would be nice, but I'm sure, just like the previous 39, Tudor will find some way to cock it up and yet still, somehow, cause millions of cookie-cutter clickbait videos by industry plant YouTubers. The newish True Travelers GMT caliber 9075 from Miyota that debuted in 2022 will further trickle into more accessibly affordable micro-brand offerings. And speaking of which, Nevada Gretchen absolutely dominated 2024. I would put my money on them continuing that reign as top boy of the microbrands in an increasingly oversaturated space that will simultaneously also see the demise of others in a true capitalist survival of the fittest scenario. Hopefully, the Tiffany dial trend will also perish. Personally, I never got that one. Maybe that's just me. I'm also hoping that Panerai will conclude their pattern of releasing 40 versions of their icons. In 2024, it was the Radio Mir. Before that, my personal favorite, the Luminor. So hopefully, the Submersible, that was originally released in 1998, is next, much to the detriment of my wallet. In 2023, I converted to a Panerista myself, and a 40mm Submersible in Carbo Tech would be as irresistible to me as Halle Berry was in the late 90s. Now, I've warned my audience of the dangers involved in buying from the grey market for almost a decade now, and unfortunately it falls mainly on deaf ears because of the savings you can make. This was after several really bad personal experiences where I was basically a victim of grey market dealers and sellers. So what does that now mean in 2024? Last year we saw the Band-Aid ripped off, with scandals exposing several YouTube watch dealers I have personally never heard of, one even going to jail apparently for allegedly scamming millions, according to the FBI. As much as I feel sorry for the victims, it did, however, clearly demonstrate why I have been so careful of who I endorse, and further illustrates my point of why watch reviews, social media content, and lifestyle watch videos shouldn't mix with watch dealers. Maybe now my warnings against the dangers of unscrupulous AliExpress watch brands and industry plant YouTubers will hopefully be taken more seriously. But sadly, with the complete death of true impartial watch journalism, with everyone basically becoming watch stores these days, it seems only a few truly independent channels remain, including yours truly, obviously. However, in 2024, I see the trend of industry plant watch YouTubers masquerading as enthusiasts with fake reviews growing, sadly, with more brands further selling out their own integrity by endorsing them as authorized dealers. In bocca al lupo, hopefully in 2024 will be the year that bubble bursts too. I managed to get my collection from 36 watches down to around 18, give or take a few, last year. Let's see this December's State of the Collection, what happens. I'm aiming for 12, more realistically 14. To further complicate things, I want to add another 4 watches. I have basically 4 watch goals, so let's take a look at that. My first and long-term collecting goal is my final grail watch. As I've said before, I'm quitting collecting and I will unveil what watch it is later this year. I'd be shooting myself in the foot if I revealed it now, as it might affect the price, before I've had a chance to finish saving up for it. If you are a die-hard true OG, original Gentry that is, you might be able to guess what it is. Second on my bucket list is the Journey to Japan watch, a pilgrimage to the Seiko Museum and hunting for a Grand Seiko, or possibly a vintage King Seiko to commemorate that adventure. This might have to be pushed back to 2025, as I'll be making some exciting big career changes this year for my work outside of this channel. My third collecting goal is a medium-term one, you could say. It is a world timer watch. And no, not the Patek that started it all with Geneva-based watchmaker Louis Cartier we previously reviewed. So let me explain. After almost pulling the trigger on that stunning Frederique Constant tourbillon last year, and after much subsequent careful consideration, one of the reasons I didn't is, well, I've always had a soft spot, and forgive me if I'm repeating myself, their truly innovative and totally proprietary world timer. Unlike everything else on the market, FC introduced their world timer as far back as 2012 with a unique in-house mechanism that is adjusted solely via the crown. Unlike Patek with an extra button, or other rivals that have a secondary crown, like the Hamilton world timer I once owned. The problem is the classic I am so enamored with is 42mm, so fingers crossed in 2024 for a 38mm one. Or I'd even take a version in 39. I still think if you have the wrists for it, the FC World Timer, either in their Genta-esque high-life sporty variety or my favourite, the dressy classic, is the best value Swiss automatic world timer on the market today. Now the fourth goal is not just one watch but a bunch of watches. Get it out of my system, so to speak. Buy, experience, flip and move on with my life. There's always several Amigas calling my name. Same goes for Longines, in fact. Pre-Swatch, of course. The Breitling Aerospace is another watch I can't ever seem to get out of my mind. After owning the massively underrated and similar Chronospace, I stalk these fantastically practical high-end Ani-Digi hybrids on eBay, almost weekly, I'm ashamed to admit.
Ain't it cool?
But being a John Woo fan too, is it any wonder? But this is a watch I don't see Breitling ever going back to, especially considering G-Shock now dominating this genre for much less in price and arguably far better specs. Now this is what I'm talking about. Another watch from the pre-Swatch era. Bracelet is a bit used, but look at that dial. Best thing is, you got a proprietary movement. Why pay twice, 3 times as much? I mean, why buy the new Conquest when you can get this? With the 1970s retro-futurist MCM brutalist aesthetic being so popular, will we see a burnout in a desire for this age of design? I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a progression of interest into more of the late 80s and 90s as a trend, considering the 90s is now firmly vintage, as we all continue to inevitably age into boring old farterdom. And yes, it seems like yesterday. As an 80s baby myself, who grew up in, well, first Italy during the difficult Anni di Piombo, then to the UK, I was raised on a rich 90s fueled diet, dominated by waiting for dial-up, or resource gathering in Age of Empires, AOL messenger pings, hoping Scully and Mulder would finally reveal the truth, all to a soundtrack of gangster rap or drum and bass. I feel the 90s is defo up next for the plundering in terms of design influences. Then there's always room for unexpected left-field releases that I impetuously pull the trigger finger on, or nostalgic blasts from the past, like my darling Muddy, the return of this trusty old friend that I really do find hard to take off the wrist. Christopher Ward's Bel Canto being another prime example of something not predicted. While their 12 watches are undoubtedly figissimo, I can't deny my expectations after their highly innovative Bel Canto was, well, a little bit higher, especially being a big opera fan myself. Anyway, I digress. Maybe it was just a flash in the pan, and I was too cautious on the trigger, the downside, I guess, of not acting impulsively.
Wearing a $2,000 suit and a $40,000 gold f***ing watch.
Then recently, I've been obsessed with Tag and Heuer 1000 divers of the late 80s and early 1990s. In the past, I've owned the gold-plated Wolf of Wall Street version, and the idea of one day adding a 007 night diver from the Living Daylights is really appealing to me. Considering I've owned so many Omegas and Rolex Submariners, maybe the more tootastically stealth and less obvious Bond watch could be really fun. Let me know your fears, hopes, desires, goals, all that good stuff in the comments. I love hearing your feedback. Don't forget to like this video, especially if you want to see more free and independent content like this. It's the best way to support the channel. Thank you for watching. Onwards and upwards. I'll catch you in the next one. Ciao.
Keep the change, you filthy animal.